All right, Mick, we started out with 6 bots. We're down to 2 now. We saw Cyclone, Spin Doctor, and Probophobia fight it out. And before that, we saw Panzer Mark IV up against Joker and Snakebite.
3.
Let's take a look at some of the highlights from that first battle.
Activate.
Panzer Mark IV, the reigning champ, went up against Joker, who they saw in the last series as well. Joker didn't do too well and got laughed out of the arena practically, courtesy of the 6-wheel drive redesigned Panzer Mark IV, who had so much power nobody could go heads up with him. Snakebite was just lurking in the background. Part of their strategy was to hope the other 2 bots would take each other out. Unfortunately for Snakebite, Panzer came right after him with a little help from Sergeant Bash. Todd Mendenhall and team from Palos Verdes, California weren't about to give up that championship too easily. His driving skills were highly proficient and nobody could get near him. So all that was left to do was for Joker and Snakebite to prove their worthiness, because this thing went down to a judge's decision. Unfortunately, Snakebite went through and Joker was in for a world of hurt.
Welcome to Joker's House of Pain.
Then in the next round, we saw Probophobia, Cyclone, and Spin Doctor go at it. Immediately, we saw Probophobia go straight into Cyclone and immobilize him completely, knocked his power link out. And just like Formula 1 racing, they got a kill switch on these robots, and it got knocked off. They were out of there from the beginning. If you look back at that again, you'll see that power link fly right off the back of Cyclone. Cyclone just got blown away by Probophobia, which meant that the house bots could come in and have their way with the immobilized bot. And to have their way they did. They got him airborne for a second. Then Dead Metal came in with that grind and wheel and escorted Cyclone ever closer to the pit of no return. The audience was chanting for it, and Dead Metal didn't disappoint them.
Cyclone's first hit was so powerful we knocked our own power link out, but we'll get him next time.
Which meant that Joker and Cyclone were the first 2 victims. Which meant the next round looked like this. Panzer and Spin Doctor up against each other head-to-head, and as usual, Panzer Mark IV had all the power, knocked the disc right out of Spin Doctor from the first mash, saw the chain hanging there like that, and the invertible Spin Doctor got flipped and was still running just enough to back into that pit trigger like that, and then back itself into the pit. Well, Panzer Mark IV did all the hard work in the beginning and let Spin Doctor take himself out in the end. The crowd was begging for a burial, and Spin Doctor didn't disappoint anybody.
Well, I guess we're going to have to do an autopsy on him. Then maybe we're going to get some pain medication.
And in the next battle, we saw Snakebite try to do its best against Probophobia, but Probophobia proved to be just too awesome. 250-pound lifting power on those probe arms brought Snakebite up into the stratosphere, skewered him by his 6-wheel drive motors, and took him ever closer to the pit of oblivion, where he carefully lowered Snakebite ever closer to his end and made sure he didn't put himself in the pit in the same motion. But he didn't, and Probophobia proved to be too strong for Snakebite.
The venom has been injected.
Well, we started out with 6 amazing bots. The first battle was Manta up against Mad Cowbot and Trilobite. Let's take a look at some of those highlights.
3, 2, 1, activate.
Well, from the get-go, Manta was doing everything. He had all the speed, and he had a weapon in the beginning, but lost it really quickly to Trilobite. Mad Cowbot was just sitting back there taking chunks out of people. but didn't really spend a whole lot of time being aggressive. Trilobite, on the other hand, came in with tons of aggressive attitude from the team, and soon was made to feel the pain from the robotic prowess of Kilolot. And as the crowd bayed for the pit, Trilobite got flipped.
Well, that wasn't Trilobite's finest hour, but you can bet we'll be back tougher than ever.
Next up, we saw Medusa Oblongata up against Rocky Balboa and the Bat. Rocky Balboa from the start was up to ramming speed, taking out one of the wings of the Bat, but the Bat had something up its own sleeve, something like a 2,500 RPM spinning disc that would have definitely launched any bot in the arena while it was in full function. The Bat lost both its wings, but not much else. But it was Medusa who needed the brain surgery, and Dr. Kilolot came to the rescue. Well, controversy surrounded the war zone as usual, as RefBot counted out the Bat, when it was really the judge's decision who said that Medusa was the one that was out first. And even though it was the Bat that hit the pit, it was Medusa that had to quit.
I guess it's time to do some repairs.
So with Medusa Oblongata out of the picture, that left 4 bots left in the competition. And that was Manta up against Rocky Balboa, and the Bat up against Mad Cowbot. Manta up against Rocky Balboa were toe-to-toe, evenly matched all the way from the beginning of this battle, just burning out their motors against each other, ramming each other up the front, hoping one of them would come up with the upper hand. Great tactics were used in there. As you see there, Balboa was pushing Manta back into the CPZ to get the house bots involved. And then once again, Rocky Balboa put Manta in harm's way with Kilolot. Well, both bots were running out of power and running out of time. And they had to end up using the judges to decide this one. But it was Rocky that got the vote.
That's what I want to do, baby!
So Manta sank without a trace, and that meant that Rocky Balboa was going to go up against the Bat or Mad Cowbot. Right from the beginning, Mad Cowbot and the Bat had an amazing tussle, and the sparks were flying off of that 2,500 RPM spinning disc of the Bat. But the Mad Cowboys weren't going to take it laying down, and they came after by ripping the wings right off the Bat. But it was this hit right here that knocked the drive belt right off of Mad Cow, and also their weapons belt, which left them out of control and burned. But it had to go to a judge's decision, because they ran out of time.
If we get past this round, we got a lot of work ahead of us.
And our distinguished panel of judges gave it to the Bat. All right, Mick, we started out with 6 bots, Black Widow, Texas Tornado, and Unibite. But the first battle we saw was Conquering Clown 2, the Brute, and Sir Force-a-Lot. Sir Force-a-Lot looked like it had all the weaponry, but it was really the Clown that did all the damage. With that spinning blade, he only got 1 shot out of it, but he made the most, that's for sure. And Sir Force-a-Lot went to pieces. But it wasn't over yet. Sir Force-a-Lot had a little plan up his sleeve as well, trying to take out the Clown. Those 5-blade spinning camshafts took out the spinner of the Clown, and then the Brute wanted to get in on the action. All of these bots were spinners in different ways, some vertical, some horizontal. But it had to go down to a judge's decision to separate them. And they decided Sir Force-a-Lot should get forced out.
So much for building a robot in 5 days. We were robbed, trashed.
So as Sir Force-a-Lot was the first victim, the next battle we saw was Black Widow, Texas Tornado, and Unibite. So right out of the blocks, Texas Tornado was taking that low-profile design right underneath Unibite. Unibite with that spinning disc was a danger to all the other bots. And Black Widow, small as she was, got in on the action as well. Unibite needed to do something to stay into this battle, because Black Widow and Texas Tornado were doing all the damaging. And Kill-A-Lot, for that matter, who came out of his corner patrol zone, making up his own rules, came after Black Widow. And Black Widow certainly got out of trouble as quick as she could. But then, somebody hit Texas Tornado so hard that it knocked the electronics loose and it was immobilized. Kill-A-Lot didn't care. It went after Unibite after the whole thing was over.
If we hadn't have lost our antenna, we would have been fine.
2 bots were out with nothing but excuses, which left 4. And those 4 were Conquering Clown 2 up against Black Widow, but first we saw Brood and Unibite. Brood in its stocky little stature used its drum off the front to bend the 172-mile-an-hour disc off a Unibite. Unibite's weapon was rendered useless after that, and it was just all about a pushing game. As Brood and Unibite took it out to the middle of the arena, Brood had some plans, but Unibite had some plans of its own. It went into the pit trigger. The audience was baying for some pit action. Brood for sure had the upper hand, we thought, until this little driving error.
All I can say is hoops, not the way we wanted to go out.
But out they went, which meant Unibite went into the finals to meet either Conquering Clown or Black Widow. After a quick pit stop, Conquering Clown's blade got restored back and almost taken out again by Black Widow. The sparks were flying off of Black Widow as Conquering Clown's blade got immobilized just briefly. Conquering Clown put Black Widow up against the rails, but Bash was trying to sneak in the back door and ordered 1 clown extra crispy. But that wasn't enough to stop the Conquering Clown. They may have been headless, but they still had a bot. Conquering Clown did as well as it could, considering it didn't have a head. Going after Black Widow in a serious way. Black Widow, all it could do is back out of trouble as much as possible. But in the end, they were still going, and it was down to a judge's decision.
Cease.
We had a good match, but it could go either way.
Never underestimate the Black Widow.
Well, possibly the Black Widow overestimated, because they are out of there. All right, Mick, as you know, we started out with 6 bots. We saw Psycho Chicken up against Propeller Head and Snookums, but that first battle was the Revolutionists, the Gap, and Trackzilla. In the first battle, the Gap went right after Trackzilla and flipped him where he stayed for the rest of that round. And then Sergeant Bash got in on the act. Poor Trackzilla, completely immobilized. From within 30 seconds, the most movement it got was off of that flipper.
Maybe upside down, but you haven't seen the last of us.
And then the next battle we saw was Snookums getting obliterated by Propeller Head and Psycho Chicken. And that was the first we saw, Propeller Head and that awesome 4-foot blade that jettisoned the mini-bot of Psycho Chicken nearly out of the arena. Next victim would have been Snookums. Snookums tried to hang in there as long as it was possible, but it was just too much of a beating. It was taken off of Propeller Head. And then Bash got in on the action and wanted to really cook up some chicken as Psycho Chicken got unfairly picked on. Usually the house bots aren't allowed to come in there unless their corners have been encroached on, but that certainly didn't happen here. Psycho Chicken got out of harm's way, but I couldn't say the same thing for Snookums as their team took their hats off and waved bye-bye to their poor little bot.
Well, Snookums thought he could beat us out there, but look who has egg on their face now.
We showed them we weren't just chicken.
Then it looks like they capsized Snookums. Arg.
Well, as Trackzilla and Snookums headed for the exits, we got a chance to see the Gap up against Propeller Head. But first, we saw the Revolutionist and Psycho Chicken. And if you ever wondered what came first, the chicken or the egg, Revolutionist had the answer for you. They went out and took the egg out, and then they took out the chicken in a big way. The wheels just got stripped off of that thing. No drive power left. That thing was helpless. No weaponry. The Revolutionist just shredded it and then barbecued it. And it burned up real good. Then Shutt backed him up on a flipper, and we got a chance to see a chicken fly. And the audience loved it.
Well, I'll tell you, we really laid an egg tonight, but we did see a chicken fly. But hats off to the Revolutionist. He did a good job.
Chicken pot pie, anyone?
Which brought us to one of the most awesome fights we've had today. As Propeller Head faced off against the Gap, Propeller Head was doing anything to try to penetrate the Gap's perimeter, and the Gap, with that lifting arm, fended off the 4-foot blade of Propeller Head, which had a brief stint of immobility, but then the Gap got it going again. And that was all she wrote, because Propeller Head hit the pit trigger, and Gap obliged him by falling in.
Didn't go as well as we planned, but we'll be back another day.
We put a gap in the gap?
It must have been the propeller hat. All right, Mick, we started out with 6. MECHADROID, Techno Trousers, and Darkness were fighting it out, and Rosie the Riveter, Night Stalker, and Basenji fought it out. Let's take a look at some of the action.
3, 2, 1, activate.
Well, from the beginning of this round, Rosie the Riveter was the one to beat. Basenji dismantled himself with losing the hole punch, and then it was Night Stalker's turn to fall apart. Look at the guts flying out of that thing. Sergeant Bash came in for a little action, but Rosie wasn't done yet. As Refbot was counting down, Night Stalker didn't move an inch unless it was helped by Killalot. And Killalot kind of helped it get warm at least, as the Night Stalker boys just looked on in disbelief. Night Stalker was well and truly out of it, certainly by the time Killalot dumped him out of the arena.
What a day.
What a lovely day!
So as La Migra goes back to the drawing board, MECHADROID, Darkness, and Techno Trousers fought it out. Well, from the beginning of this bat, Techno Trousers was suspended in animation as MECHADROID was getting the better of him, burying that axe and pushing him all across the arena, every direction. And then it was a free-for-all with Killalot included, and Darkness jumping in and out. Poor Techno Trousers was surrounded by bot hostility. As Bash got in on the action, MECHADROID was taking Techno Trousers to the cleaners, pushing him a little bit closer to the pit. But in the last-minute surprise, Darkness dumped MECHADROID in it, and then followed right after.
It was kind of slippery to drive in there, but it was good.
So with the first 2 bot casualties out of the way, that meant it was down to 4. And they were Basenji and Darkness, and Rosie the Riveter up against Techno Trousers. Well, Techno Trousers from the start knew they were on borrowed time, and Rosie made them feel it even more. Because Rosie was out to Techno prisoners, that's for sure. And Dead Metal and Matilda got in on the act as well. It was full carnage for the Techno Trouser family. I'll tell you, they better get a little more weaponry next time they come out. And Rosie used every aspect of that arena to demonstrate its absolute dominance over Techno Trousers. Poor Techno was just getting pushed around, but then ended up getting a bit of a free ride. Not necessarily to where I wanted to go, but it went anyway, straight down the pit.
Well, they caught us with our pants down, but we're going to be back.
So with Rosie through, it just left Basenji and Darkness to fight it out for that last spot. And Darkness came out like gangbusters. With a little help from Matilda, just to keep things even. Basenji had a bit of an alignment problem, and then Darkness had a weapons problem. But the icing on the cake is when the wheels fell right off of Basenji, leaving them completely immobilized and making Darkness think they were fairly dominant. As Refbot countered them out, Dead Meadow came into the action with a saw and the pushing power, taking Basenji ever closer to an inevitable death. And as the audience chanted for the pit, the housebots had something else in their mind. More destruction on Basenji.
Well, now, cease is my favorite word.
All right, Mick, we had quite a Botley crew to start out with. Termite, King of Diamonds, and Drugbot. And then, first off, we saw Discotech, Tricerabot, and the Brawler. So right from the start, Discotech looked like the one to beat. With four-wheel drive power, he was doing one-wheel stands, but Tricerabot was going to make him feel some pain. Tricerabot had a major power in that lifting arm, and the Brawler made its presence known as well. No matter how tiny it was compared to the rest of the bots, but Tricerabot was dominating. This was a great battle, this first one. Everybody was in it till the very end. But it was the death of Disco.
I thought we were doing just fine, and there became this square hole in the floor, and I fell in. Man, frustrating.
So, with a frustrated Discotech out of it, we next saw the Termite, Dragbot, and the King of Diamonds. So King of Diamonds, dealing from the bottom of the deck, got up to major spinning speed. Not any of the other bots wanted to get near him while he was up there. But when he stopped, Dragbot came in with a long wedge. And Termite just seemed to stay out of the way for most of that round. Definitely not very effective. Now that redesigned Termite could have been better off digging tunnels, because in Robot Wars, they didn't do too well today. After a certain point, it seemed as if all these bots were running out of steam. And the house bots were getting hungry and impatient. Termite wasn't rolling too far, but Shunt just couldn't take it anymore. It legally came out of his corner patrol zone and buried the deck. But it went to a judge's decision, and Termite was out of there.
In the end, we weren't in the pit, and we didn't burn this time.
So as Termite went out, there was only 4 left to fight it out. And they were Brawler and Dragbite, but first we saw Tricerabot and King of Diamonds. King of Diamonds did its usual spinning best to stay away from the lifting arm of Tricerabot, but Tricerabot's driving ability was just 100% from the beginning of that round. They were using their lifting arm, they were using their speed and agility, and certainly a bit of strategy to get most of those triggers going for the arena. First it was the Disc of Doom trigger, and then they hit the pit trigger. And of course, King of Diamonds obliged them by hitting the pit themselves.
Looks like we went into the pit. Triceratops went prehistoric on us.
So the King of Diamonds ran out of extra cards, and Brawler and Dragbot were up next. So then we had the classic Davy and Goliath opposition with Dragbot and Brawler. Brawler, another spinner, could have got up to speed and done some real damage on Dragbot, but Dragbot served as an amazing ramp, a high-speed ramp. But they certainly had their share of problems in this round as well. There for a minute, it just didn't have any power going to those wheels. And promptly got his power going again, only to drive into the corner patrol zone, where Kill-A-Lot and Shunt were going to make a quick mess of him. Kill-A-Lot got him up and over the rail, but the clock had already counted down, and that went to a judge's decision where the Brawler prevailed.
All that work down the drain.
Yep, you win some, you lose some.
Yep, start over, try again.
All right, Mick, here's how they lined up in the first battle. We saw Runaway up against Destructive Criticism and Lightning Tracks, but first we saw Chomps-A-Lot, G-Force, and Marauder. So the return of Chomps-A-Lot in a new, upgraded, more powerful version seemed to take a lot of advantage in the first round. But G-Force was not to be undone. It had plenty of speed and plenty of power, a bit of good driving ability, and Marauder acted as a jump for Chomps-A-Lot more than once or twice in that round. Chomps-A-Lot got tangled up with Refbot, and then Shunt was testing out G-Force just to see if he was still mobile. And G-Force were boasting that they were taking their designs from the F-14 fighter jet. But the only real similarity I saw with G-Force and an F-14 was how much air it got right off of this ramp. They were out of it, and Shunt came to clean up the garbage. Oops. Next up, we saw Destructive Criticism, Lightning Tracks, and Runaway. Now, Destructive Criticism were up to full speed with that blade off the front. Lightning Tracks, with their track motion, were very low to the ground and took the first hit off a Runaway, ripping the gun right off the top there. Fortunately, it wasn't loaded. And then Runaway got obliterated by that 1,200 RPM spinning disc off the front of Destructive Criticism. Destructive Criticism was definitely the one to beat in this round. He just completely demolished his opposition. There was nothing but robot carcasses left over after Destructive Criticism had its way. And I'll tell you, Runaway got through by the skin of their teeth. Lightning Tracks was the first immobilized, which means they were out of it.
Well, it looks like we became the meat in a bot sandwich.
So after 2 rounds, G-Force and Lightning Tracks go out, which meant we were down to 4. And first up, we saw Chomps-A-Lot and Runaway fight it out. Straight out of the blocks, Runaway went right for a strategy move and hit that pit trigger. And then Chomps-A-Lot came along and made him pay for it. And the audience were screaming for the pit, but Chomps-A-Lot had something else in its mind. It was going to do some damage with a spike, knocking the drivetrain right off of Runaway. Runaway didn't have any Shreemag capabilities, so they were just stuck up against the rail. And Chomps-A-Lot was taking full advantage, and then Bash got in on the action, pulling Chomps-A-Lot out of his well-deserved meal. And Bash went in there with a flamethrower and the pincers and just crunched down on Runaway and dragged Runaway out to the middle of the arena. They were hoping to stick him in the pit until Chomps-A-Lot came along to play a little tug-of-war. Chomps-A-Lot was not about to give up easily and ended up winning the tug-of-war and the round.
The General's a friend of ours, and we knew we were in trouble here. He's built just perfect to do exactly what he did to us.
We gave the General strict orders to immediately start chomping, and we did so.
So fighting it out for one place left in today's finals was Marauder up against the awesome Destructive Criticism. Now, Destructive Criticism didn't show its power like in previous rounds, and Marauder was actually in there to do some damage. Unfortunately, Destructive Criticism got stuck in the grinder and seriously damaged its front wheel. And then Marauder went up against the rail and smashed one of its arms off. After that, it was all about the housebots getting in on the action. Dead Metal was in there trying to munch away at Destructive Criticism. Refbot was running interference, but Marauder ended up committing suicide, jumping in the hole.
Now, next time I'll have more driving lessons.
We came, we sawed, he left.
All right, Mick, the road to today's final looked like this. We saw Falcon Mark II, Bunny Attack, and Paul Bunyan fighting it out. But first we saw Xylon, Tyrannobot, and Buzz in a real Bada-Bashathon.
3, 2, 1, activate.
Well, it started out like gangbusters as Buzz, Tyrannobot, and Xylon were definitely hungry for some bots. We never really saw Tyrannobot's big clenching jaws in action. It seemed like its mouth was open for the whole round. But definitely Buzz upended Xylon on its side, and fortunately Xylon got a little power to the wheels, but not before Matilda came in and made him feel it. Now Xylon finally got back going again and level, and had that funny looking flipping arm working, but it wasn't getting under any bots. So Xylon, with a little strategy and a lot of dents, went over and hit that pit trigger, but it was a little too late. By the time this round was over, it had to go to a judge's decision.
It's going to be a close call.
Unfortunately, that close call wasn't for Xylon as Tyrannobot and Buzz advanced through. Next, we saw Falcon, Bunny Attack, and Paul Bunyan. This was the first showing of the return of Falcon, who was determined to burn some Bunny on his first round. However, the Bunny had other intentions with that 8-pound sledgehammer. It wasn't creating any dents, but he certainly got a lot of licks in, which were getting counted for the judges. Now, the one that was weak in this round was Paul Bunyan. Paul Bunyan just didn't have the weaponry to stand up to the rest of the opposition, as the Bunny Attack was just pounding constantly through. And Falcon, with that lifting arm, got the Bunny elevated just slightly, and the housebots were hungry and waiting on the sides. But he quickly got out of that one, and then the Bunny was on the attack. It was a big strategy fight here, but the thing is, only two could go through, and this had to go to a judge's decision.
Cease.
They're all great robots. It's been a great battle. May the best bot win.
And unfortunately, it wasn't your bot, which left us with 4 bots to fight it out. So we saw Buzz and Falcon Mark II, but first we saw Tyrannobot and Bunny Attack. Bunny Attack with that hammer wasn't doing any damage with it, but certainly getting counted for the strokes as Tyrannobot got inflamed and Bash got out of his corner patrol zone, way out of the rule book. He wasn't meant to be anywhere near there. And Tyrannobot, with them jaws still wide open all the way through the round, had to tussle it out. And then all hell broke loose as the housebots came out of their corner patrol zones for no particular reason other than to do absolute damage to Tyrannobot. And they sure did, as Bash ripped Tyrannobot's jaws of life or death, in this case, right off the front. And then Tyrannobot hit the pit trigger and stuffed the Bunny down the hole.
It was a good battle. I feel that we could have won if only we hadn't fallen in the pit.
So with the upset Bunny, or a Bunny upset, Tyrannobot went through. Next we saw Buzz and Falcon Mark II. Well, right from the beginning, we saw Buzz and that spinning drum try anything it could to stay away from Falcon's lifting arm. Falcon's lifting arm definitely proved to be a big pain in the side for Buzz as it got launched right over into Killalot's corner patrol zone, and it was almost all over after that because Killalot decided to smash Buzz around as Falcon hit the pit trigger. It was almost like a tag team effort with Killalot trying to take the role of ref bot and deciding that Buzz was counted out and immobile, and certainly proved it by lifting him high above the arena and then dunking him.
The word to the wise, avoid Sir Killalot.
Well, spoken from experience, Buzz and Bunny Attack are the losers. They fighting it out. We're going to see Tricerabot against Rocky Balboa, Propeller Head against Falcon Mark II, Conquering Clown 2 against Destructive Criticism. But first up, we're going to see Panzer Mark IV against Rosie the Riveter. First, let's take a look at how those two got into the finals. Panzer Mark IV took out Probophobia. And Rosie the Riveter chalked one up for the good old Stars and Stripes by taking out Darkness. So Conquering Clown, in order to go through, had to take a little punishment from Sergeant Bash. But then it was time for them to dish out the punishment, and Unibite felt it with a washing machine. The Clown goes up against Destructive Criticism, who took out Marauder in a little assisted roboticide. Propellerhead had no easy ride to the finals as they faced the awesome Revolutionist, who tore its blade off, but then Propellerhead dumped him in the pit. And they'll be facing Falcon Mark II, who just barely scraped through up against Tyrannobot. So Rocky Balboa in its road to the final had to take out the bat, and had a little bat barbecue on the way. And Tricerabot met the Brawler to get to the final and put the Brawler in the pit. Down to you, Carol, in the pits. All right, Mick, we started out with Thor's Hammer, Revenge the Termite, Hyperactive Brute, and Cyclone. Only one robot goes out in each round. So in the first round of the Annihilator, we saw Thor's Hammer take a major pounding. We never saw that hammer in action, but we definitely saw Hyperactive's blade flip old Thor's Hammer up to the heavens. And then it was Cyclone's turn to get in on it, and they weren't messing around. They put the hammer out of commission. Just look at the speed of that disc.
At one point it does hurt, but you know, if you're gonna die, you die with the boots on.
So in the next round, we were down to 5, with Revenge, the Termite, Hyperactive Brute, and Cyclone to fight it out. Little Brute and Little Termite seemed to have their work cut out for them in this round, but Hyperactive had some troubles. That trouble being Cyclone, who completely dismantled their weaponry. The double thickness of Cyclone's spinning blade may make Hyperactive team think about designing a little stronger next time. And then it was Brute's time to be flipped out, but he stayed in the arena, and it was really Hyperactive that was going to disintegrate before our very eyes. Cyclone was doing his best to get him completely out of the arena, out of commission, and out of this Annihilator. And he did it.
Your robot looked to match up very well with the Cyclone, but it didn't work out that way. What happened? What's the difference?
Well, he's got stronger motors and a bigger and better built robot.
Yeah. Well, meanwhile, back at the ranch, Revenge, the Termite, Brute, and Cyclone decided to fight it out. And right from the beginning, Cyclone was proving to be its dominant self, as it was taking apart the opposition, and the little Brute and Termite got flipped simultaneously, and then Cyclone went right after the Termite, tore a wheel right off his drivetrain. But the little Termite, even though he lost a wheel, he still had some driving power. Just look at the damage inflicted from Cyclone. And then Cyclone inflicted a bit of damage on itself by hanging on those flames a bit too long and torched up the inner workings of that bot. They were about ready to fry when Brute hit the pit trigger. As Brute was trying to nestle poor little Termite closer and closer to the pit, Cyclone were thinking about what they had to do in the pits.
Termites don't fly, but we had a lot of fun burrowing into that pit.
And then there were 3. Revenge, Brute, and Cyclone. Now, Cyclone, we know what he's capable of, but we never saw anything out of Revenge until this round. Revenge had a quick little spin around, trying to get some angle, but Cyclone proved to be too strong. The little Brute was sneaking around, picking up some scraps, hitting the pit trigger. Great driving strategy on the Brute team's part. That's what brought him into the final. But poor Revenge got into a vengeful corner patrol zone filled by Sergeant Bash and Dead Metal, and they made him feel it. Poor Revenge were certainly put out of commission then, and Cyclone and Brute just watched on as Bash buried Revenge.
It was a good fight. We did our best. We're coming back next season to kick some butt.
Which brings us to where we are now, the finals